Hello everyone, welcome once again to WEGS Garage. Got a lot to do today, so I'm not going to talk for too long. We are going to try and get that transmission for our 1964 Triumph TR4 put back together, and hopefully by the end of the day have some fluids in it and be checking to make sure it doesn't have any leaks or anything like that. So that's the goal for today. I'm not going to talk a lot, we're just going to get right to it and get this thing put back together. So let's go. So we still got our main shaft here on the bench. Dad got the second and third gear installed over the course of the week here. You can see that at the end of our last video. So now we gotta get the rest of the gears on there and check these spring tensions on these actual synchro hubs and make sure that's good. Then I think we just gotta slide everything on and get it inside the case. Okay, so that pretty much completes our main shaft assembly for now. Now we are doing this in a little different way than what the actual workshop manual does. What the workshop manual recommends is that you press the bearing onto this shaft and then assemble all the gears inside the actual gearbox case. But because of that third gear circlip, it just seemed like that's going to be a really hard way to do it if you don't have that Churchill tool. So what we're doing is more like the Greasy Hands garage guide, which is we're building this up. We can slide this through the case and then press the bearing on to the shaft afterwards. It makes that process a little bit more complicated. It does make it easier to kind of get all this stuff put together when it's just sitting on the bench here and you got a lot of room to work. So now I think we got to get this put in the case, get our input shaft figured out, and kind of go from there. So here we go. Our input shaft is now fully assembled here. Got new oil thrower back down inside there, brand new bearing, new spacer there, and the circlip on. The bearing is a pretty tight press fit, but we were able to do that just with a piece of 1.25" pipe and just tapping it down kind of carefully down there on the floor. And that didn't go too bad. So the next step, I think, is going to be getting all this stuff put inside the case and getting the rear bearing on, which I think is probably going to be a little more challenging, but we will find out. Our main shaft is in place. We got the bearing on. I think I mean, this seems like this is the toughest part of the whole transmission assembly process, so it's really nice to have that done. We basically slid the bearing down, and then there's not a lot of room to work here because these gears have to mesh with the gears below them, but you have maybe a 3/8 of an inch here where you can kind of move back and forth, and we just used that space and alternated on putting the bearing in the case and putting the bearing on the shaft, and just worked it in until it was up against there. And you can see we got the circlip in place, and that's all ready to go. That is looking awesome. We did end up wiring the gears together because this selector here will slide off the end if you don't, so that made it a little bit easier to work with. We used the same piece of pipe we used to put the bearing on the input shaft here, and then we had another small piece of pipe that we tapped on the other end of the shaft with. So there you can see how that fits over there. Sits up real nice against there. It's 1.25 inch pipe, schedule 40 if you do need to do something like this. Works really nicely.
And this is 1/2 inch black pipe.
Yeah, and that just fits right up against there, gives you something to tap on that's a little, gives you a little extension. So now all we gotta do is get the input shaft in. I think there's a seal in the input shaft cover we replace. Get everything pressed together. And that's, I mean, that's pretty much it for the main part of the transmission.
This worked out pretty good. Jim went this way, Mark went this way. Jim went this way, Mark went this way. Done.
Alright, so one thing that wasn't very clear to us before that has recently become quite clear, all the manuals basically say to drop the countershaft down to the bottom of the casing when you're putting the main shaft in, and we didn't really understand why that is, so I'm going to show everybody why that is. And it is because you can't actually fit this part of the gear past this first gear shaft there. So that's why you want that drop down. So unfortunately we're kind of late to the party on that one. We're a little bit nervous about dropping the countershaft down, so we're gonna try to just back out the main shaft assembly a little bit and get just a little bit of an angle going back here on the case. Kind of questionable whether that's the right thing to do, but I think we can get it all aligned if we do that, so we're gonna try it. At least before we drop the countershaft, which sounds like a real pain, so. Alright, so that is definitely not going to work. Not a good idea. Bad idea altogether. So we're going to have to cut a piece of tube to hold the roller bearings in the countershaft, and then we're gonna have to drop the whole countershaft down so we can get our input shaft in, and so we can get this back in, because you can somehow get that out, but it ain't going back in. So yeah, so we just gotta push this shaft out for the countershaft and drop it down. And yeah, oh yeah, we're having fun. Okay, well there you have it. Pushing that counter shaft out was quite nerve-wracking. Luckily, Dad has a lot of tubes that were just the right size to slide in, kind of take the place of the shaft, so all the needle bearings in the counter shaft assembly didn't fall out everywhere. And then we dropped it down, got our input and main shaft on there together, and then we used some different size rods to kind of lift that counter shaft back up. Again, it was a little bit exciting, because you know, if we screwed up and any of those bearings fell out, we would basically be taking the entire thing apart again to get those back in. So luckily that did not happen. So basically all we have left now on this transmission, we got to get this front cover on there. And I guess we had some lofty goals for today. Not really sure how much further past that we're going to take it, but this feels like quite an accomplishment here. Everything's in, new synchros, new bearings, new transmission. This is awesome. That's it. We got our front cover in. So basically, aside from the overdrive, the transmission is put back together. I guess we still have to put the throw-out bearing and the yoke inside there, but that's not anything too challenging, so we can get that another day. So unfortunately, we didn't get it all put back together, because we can't fill it up until we fill up with oil until we put the overdrive on there. So we'll take care of that next week, but this feels like a pretty good accomplishment for today. All our gears in place. Everything's looking really good. Yeah, it's awesome. All right, well, that's our show for today. Dad, would you like to say a few words?
It's hot out here.
It is indeed hot out here. Whew, and we got a lot done, so I think we're going to have a beer and talk about what we're going to do next time. So thanks so much for watching. If you like the video, go ahead and hit that like button and maybe consider subscribing if you want to see some more of this kind of stuff. We're going to keep working on this transmission. We're going to get it back in the car. We're going to go driving. It's going to be fun. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Bye.